Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into one of ancient Rome's least glamorous corners, and possibly the most unforgettable. Picture this. It's the hour before dawn, the city's marble facades still slick with night mist, and you're waking to the sour, unmistakable perfume of human urine fermenting in clay jars. Welcome to the life of a fuller, a Roman launderer. You probably won't survive this one without wrinkling your nose. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening somewhere far from the smell of ammonia and wool grease, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you all are in the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before the first hint of sunlight, when even the bakers are still asleep, and the streets of Rome are quiet except for the soft shuffle of slaves carrying buckets. Your cot creaks as you sit up, back already stiff from yesterday's stomping. The air inside your workshop is thick, not with the comforting smell of bread or oil, but with that sharp, throat-scorching tang of ammonia. It clings to everything, your hands, your clothes, even your dreams. Outside, the cobbled street glistens faintly under lamplight. You can hear the faint slosh of a passing cart, one of the piss collectors making his rounds. He whistles tunelessly, hauling amphorae filled with what Romans call aqua lotta, washed water. But everyone knows what it really is. There's a tax on it, after all. Emperor Vespasian, in his famously practical way, decided to collect revenue from the city's most abundant natural resource, its public urinals. He even joked about the prophet's smell being sweet. Historians still argue whether he actually said pecunia non olet, or if that line was polished later by clever biographers. You stretch, bones popping, and step over the slick floor toward the vats. They're big earthenware tubs sunk into the ground, full of last night's deliveries. The surface shimmers faintly, a greasy rainbow under the dim oil lamps. A rat scurries by, pausing long enough to glare at you like you're the intruder. "Morning, Titus," you mutter to the rat. He blinks once, unimpressed, and disappears into the shadows. It's a ritual by now. Checking the vats, stirring them with a stick, muttering the same complaints under your breath. You've long stopped wondering how your life led to this. You're a fuller, part of an ancient chain of Roman industry that stretches from the sheep's fleece to the senator's toga. You're what stands between filth and fashion. The well-to-do rely on you more than they'll ever admit. Outside your shop, the alley begins to stir. The air fills with the wet sound of chamber pots being emptied, the distant chatter of barmaids sweeping the fronts of taverns, and somewhere, the melodic laughter of a prostitute wrapping up her night shift. The city may look like marble by daylight, but right now, it's all mud, waste, and whispers. You drag one of the jars closer, pop the lid, and immediately regret breathing. The stench could knock a gladiator flat. You cough, gag a little, then laugh. You've built up a dark sense of humor about all this. "Smells like profit," you joke to no one in particular. That's when young Marcus shows up, your apprentice. Barely 12, with hair that never quite decides whether to curl or mat. He stumbles in with sleep still crusted in his eyes. "You're late," I grumble. "It's not dawn yet," he mumbles back, scratching his nose. "I thought maybe the pots wouldn't be full." I smirk. "This is Rome, boy. There's always something full." He groans, and you toss him a worn sponge. The day begins. The first task is sorting. The laundries take in clothes from all walks of life. Thick woolen tunics from soldiers, dyed cloaks from actors, linen from patricians who pretend they're too refined to sweat. Each pile has its own personality. Some garments are stiff with grime, others slick with oil or blood. The most dreaded are the red cloaks. That dye bleeds into everything, staining fingers and vats alike. You handle them carefully, setting them aside. The vats have to be at the right temperature for cleaning, cool enough not to ruin the cloth, warm enough to coax out the stains. It's a delicate balance learned through years of failure. You remember when you first started, thinking the job was just stomping in muck. Then you learn the chemistry behind it. Not that the word chemistry exists yet, but you can feel it. The urine ferments, releasing ammonia, breaking down grease, softening fibers. It's a living process, like brewing wine or baking bread. Except instead of grapes or flour, your main ingredient is, well, people's digestive output. Historians still argue whether Roman fullers understood the science or just trusted tradition. But you've noticed small things, how the season changes the soak time, how different diets alter the strength of the mixture. Too much tavern ale in the city's bladders makes the solution weak. A good festival with salty fish and garum, stronger than ever. "Ready, boy?" I ask, stripping off my tunic. Marcus nods reluctantly, staring at the vats as though they might bite. "Do I have to?" "You'll toughen up faster this way," I say, stepping in. The liquid is warm, unnervingly so. I shudder, but start stomping. The cloth beneath my feet squishes like kneaded dough, bubbles rising as I move in rhythm. The first few minutes always sting, but after that it's just another day. Marcus joins in, his face twisted in disgust. "It's in my toes," he yells. "Good," I grinned. "Means you're working properly." I start humming to keep the rhythm. The others in nearby workshops join in faintly, a strange chorus of half-asleep workers stomping laundry across the neighborhood. Somewhere, a lark begins to sing, faintly rising over the hiss of steam. By the time the sun crests the rooftops, the air is already thick with vapor. The warmth of the day hits the vats, amplifying every odor. You can almost taste the work on your tongue. Around this time, passers-by start covering their noses as they hurry past your alley. One woman, her hair wrapped in fine linen, mutters, "How can anyone live like that?" I laugh softly. "With a full stomach and clean sandals, lady." Because that's the irony. Rome's pristine togas, those glowing symbols of purity and power, owe their brightness to your filth. The senators stride into the forum looking divine, their garments luminous as marble statues, never realizing they're wrapped in the invisible ghosts of your labor. I used to resent it, but now it's just funny. Civilization, you think, is built on sweat, waste, and the people willing to stand in it. When the first batch is done, you wring the water out and set the garments aside for rinsing. Marcus groans, his feet pale and wrinkled. You toss him a rag to dry off. "Don't complain," I say. "This is how Rome keeps clean." He looks doubtful. "Feels like Rome's just getting dirtier." I can't argue with that. The city's expanding faster than anyone can clean it. Aqueducts carry water by the ton, but the drains choke, the streets overflow, and the air is a cocktail of incense, bread, smoke, and sewage. Yet somehow life thrives. I lean against the wall for a moment, watching sunlight creep down the opposite buildings. A baker nearby starts pounding dough, and the smell of yeast mixes strangely with your own chemical fog. For a brief second, the city feels alive, pulsing, filthy, glorious. I smile. Another day begins in the stinking quarter.
The sun's up now, gilding the rooftops and striking the cobbles like molten gold. Except that here, in your narrow quarter of Rome, the light only makes the grime glimmer more vividly. You stretch your sore legs, feeling the sting of ammonia fade into the dull throb of overuse. The morning shift has barely begun, and already your lungs ache from the fumes. But there's no time to rest. The collectors are coming. You can hear them before you see them. The creak of cartwheels, the slap of sandals on wet stone, and the unmistakable slosh of clay jars brimming with liquid gold. Rome's most valuable waste is arriving, and you're one of the men who will transform it into profit. "Move aside, Launderer," one of the drivers shouts cheerfully as his mule-drawn cart squeezes through the alley. He's a burly fella named Cassius, always reeking faintly of sour ale and civic pride. "Brought you the good stuff today, straight from the taverns of Sabura." You grin. "Ha, Nothing like vintage tavern piss to start the day. He laughs, hoisting one of the amphorae down with a grunt. Careful, though. This batch has a bite. He's not wrong. You uncork the lid, and a wave of heat and chemical sharpness assaults your senses. You gag, eyes watering, and Marcus nearly drops his sponge in horror. Cassius cackles. The smell of success, eh? Vespasian would be proud. You nod, wiping your nose on your sleeve. Emperor Vespasian, the man who managed to tax even human waste. He ordered large jars, Vespasana, placed around the city for the collection of urine, used by tanners, launderers, and dyers. People complained at first, not because of the smell, but because of the principle. Taxing pee? Outrageous. But Vespasian, never one to back down, lifted a coin to his nose and said, "Money doesn't stink." Historians still argue whether he meant it as a joke or a philosophy. You figure it's both. You sign Cassius's ledger, a smudged scroll tracking every amphora delivered, every payment due. Rome runs on paperwork as much as it runs on sewage. The collectors are the first link in your chain, hauling the city's excess to your doorstep, and without them, the Phallonica would grind to a halt. Got any for the tanners? Cassius asks. Next door, I nod, though theirs turns out worse than ours. He shrugs, fracks his whip, and the cart rattles off, leaving behind a pungent mist and the faint echo of his humming. Now comes the delicate part, distribution. You and Marcus carry the amphorae one by one, pouring them into different vats according to strength and freshness. Some are still frothing, as in new vintage, as the old hands call it, while others have mellowed into a rich, acrid tang that clings to your tongue when you breathe too deep. You've learned to judge by scent, like a sommelier of filth. A good batch smells sharp, but not sour. A bad one burns the nose and ruins fabric. It's an art form in its own grotesque way. Marcus holds his nose. Why can't we just use water like normal people? Because, boy, I explain, water's good for rinsing, not cleaning. Grease needs acid, and the gods have kindly given us an endless supply. He looks unconvinced. Feels like we're cursed, not blessed. I chuckle. Depends on your perspective. Some men wash silk for senators. We wash sweat from soldiers. At least our clients don't try to stab us. He snorts. Yet. We both laugh, the sound echoing strangely in the stone-walled courtyard. Across the alley, another fuller named Publius is already singing, a rough baritone belting out a tune about Venus and vinegar. He's older, missing half his teeth, but his humor's intact. He sees you watching and calls out, "Hey, Titus, your vat's still alive or did it die of shame?" You grin. "Still breathing, unlike your apprentice." He roars with laughter, slapping his knee. The two of you have an ongoing rivalry over who can produce the brightest whites, an absurd contest considering both of you end the day looking like boiled prunes. But competition keeps the work bearable. By mid-morning, the alley's alive. The air hums with activity. Vats bubbling, brushes scraping, apprentices running errands, and the occasional whoosh of someone throwing out wash water. Rome is nothing if not noisy, and even in this grimy corner, it buzzes with life. A stray dog pads through, tail wagging, sniffing every puddle as if auditioning for dinner. Someone throws him a scrap of bread. He gobbles it and trots off, leaving behind a trail of paw prints on the wet flagstones. You pause for a moment and watch the sunlight hit the steam rising from your vats. It turns golden, then pearly white, like smoke from an invisible fire. You almost forget the smell. Almost. It's in this brief quiet that a philosopher named Decamus passes by, robes tucked up to avoid the muck. He's a regular customer, one of those eccentric scholars who prides himself on understanding the soul of labor. Titus, he says, adjusting his scrolls. Still bathing garments in the essence of humanity, I see. You wipe your hands on your apron. Someone has to keep your toga from glowing in the dark, philosopher. He chuckles. Tell me, does the odor ever trouble your dreams? All the time, but it keeps the bad spirits away. Decamus nods gravely. A fair trade, then. Filth for protection. He strides off, probably to lecture someone about stoicism and soap. Historians still argue whether Roman philosophers ever acknowledged workers like you in their treatises. Most wrote of virtue, discipline, the grandeur of the state. But the real virtue, you think, is surviving 12 hours a day in liquid waste without losing your sense of humor. You head to the back storage room, where the older jars are fermenting in the dark. It's like stepping into another world, the air thick, the smell overwhelming. Marcus stays by the door, reluctant to follow. Come on, I coax. You've got to learn how to tell a good batch from a spoiled one. He grimaces, but steps inside. The clay jars gleam faintly in the dim light, each sealed with wax and labeled with crude scratches. T, S, B, tavern, stable, bathhouse. You pop open one, the bathhouse blend. See this, you say? Cleaner, lighter color. People at the baths drink more water, less wine, makes for purer liquid. He squints. Still smells like death. Only to the untrained nose, I reply, with mock elegance. To me, it smells like tomorrow's profit. We both laugh again, though his laughter's more forced. Outside, a crier's voice booms from the main street. Fresh fish from Ostia, anchovies, eels, and mullets. Another yells about a new gladiator match. Life in Rome is constant theater. Shouts, smells, and gossip overlapping like instruments in a chaotic orchestra. You catch yourself smiling again. Somehow, even surrounded by filth, the city feels magnificent. The marble temples, the sound of distant fountains, the sight of doves circling the forum. They all exist just beyond your alley. Rome's beauty and its grime share the same air, and you, in your own bizarre way, keep it balanced. By noon, the vats are full, your arms ache, and the collectors have finished their rounds. You lean against the wall, panting, and watch Marcus struggle to lift the last amphora. He nearly drops it, but you catch it just in time. Careful, I scold gently. That's money you're spilling. He wipes his brow. Doesn't smell like money. I grin. That's because you're still new. He frowns. When does the smell stop bothering you? I think for a long moment, gazing at the steam rising from the vats. Never. You just stop caring. A shadow crosses the alley. The sun's directly overhead now, the light harsh and merciless. I glance toward the main street and see a cart loaded with amphoras heading to another district. Someone waves, calling my name. It's Lucilla, a washer from across the river, her hair tied up in a bright scarf. Need help with rinsing later? She calls. Only if you promise not to outshine me again, I shout. She laughs. Too late for that, Titus. Marcus grins. You like her. I shrug, pretending not to. She's got strong arms, good for scrubbing. He snickers, and you flick water at him. For a brief moment, the laughter feels lighter than the air around you. You take one last look around the workshop, the vats lined up like giant wine presses, the jars stacked neatly, the floor slick with the morning's labor. It's hard, thankless work, but as the smell of lunch wafts in from the nearby bakery, you can't help but feel a strange sense of pride. Rome doesn't run on glory alone. It runs on men like you, stomping through filth.
By the time the midday sun begins to mellow into the early afternoon glow, you've eaten your fill of coarse bread and olives, and you're back in the workshop again. The air feels even thicker now, like walking through a warm sponge soaked in vinegar.
The vats bubble faintly, each exhaling a sour breath that clings to your skin. You roll your shoulders, glance at Marcus, and sigh. "Time for the hard part," you mutter. Marcus groans. "Wasn't the hard part already the hard part?" "You'll learn," you say, smiling grimly, "that in this place there's always another level of hard." And there it is, the next stage of your trade, sorting, soaking, and stepping. It's the heartbeat of the Fulonica, where all the filth of Rome comes to shed its sins. The clothes arrive in heaps. Some are carried by clients, merchants, soldiers, even slaves sent on errands. Others delivered in bundles by hired boys. They're tied up in linen, labeled by little wax tags, and every single one is filthy in its unique way. The soldier's tunic smells of sweat and leather. The actor's cloak reeks of wine and grease paint. The senator's toga, the senator's toga, smells like perfume gone rancid, like lilies drowned in vinegar. You and Marcus untie the bundles, sorting the piles by type: wool, linen, mixed cloth, dyes or no dyes, rich or poor. You can tell a man's fortune by the texture of his stains. Marcus holds up one particularly stiff garment between two fingers. Was this worn by a man or a goat? Both, by the look of it, you say, tossing it into the first vat. It lands with a wet slap. Bubbles rise. Steam curls. The workshop comes alive again. You pull off your tunic, roll up your trousers, and climb into the vat. The first plunge always steals your breath. The liquid clings to your legs, warm and slick, creeping between your toes like some ancient creature waking up for its meal. Marcus hesitates on the edge. "It looks deeper today." "Yeah," you say. "That's because it is. More orders, less water, means more stomping. Congratulations." He grimaces but joins you. Together you start to tread. One step forward, one step back, like dancers in a grotesque slow-motion waltz. The soaked cloth squishes underfoot, sending up fat bubbles that burst against your shins. You've developed a rhythm over the years. Heel, toe, twist, squeeze. The key is not to think about what's between your feet. The key is to imagine something else entirely. Sometimes you picture crushing grapes for wine. Sometimes you imagine marching across a battlefield of foam. Today, you think of nothing, just the repetitive hypnotic sound of feet churning through the past. Marcus complains, as apprentices always do. "It's getting in my toenails." "That's where the magic happens," you tease. "Clean inside and out." He doesn't laugh. He's still young enough to gag every few minutes. But you can see him toughening up already, his steps more confident, his hands less fussy. Every few minutes you pause to wring out a tunic or two. The fabric is heavy, dark with old grime. But as you twist, faint white patches emerge. You toss the garments into the rinse pile and start again. This is the moment most people would crack. The monotony, the heat, the smell, it breaks something in them. But you've long since crossed that threshold. The rhythm of the vats becomes a kind of meditation. Historians still argue whether ancient laborers like you were conscious of the science behind their work. Ammonia breaking down fats, alkaline reactions bleaching fibers, or whether they simply followed instinct and tradition. You suspect it's a bit of both. You don't need scrolls to know that fresher urine cleans faster, or that sunlight makes the rinse brighter. You've learned it by living it, breath by breath, vat by vat. Now and then you catch yourself watching the reflection of light on the surface of the liquid. It dances, fractured by bubbles and swirls like molten bronze. The air hums faintly with the echo of other fullers working nearby. Somewhere, someone hums a marching tune. Someone else whistles. Rome is alive in its noise. Marcus tries to hum along but ends up coughing. Do you ever, he pauses for breath, get used to the smell? No, you say. You just forget it's there. He nods, splashing in silence. After a while, he adds, Why do they call us fullers, anyway? You smile faintly. From fulones, to full the cloth, means to thicken, to strengthen. We're not just washing, we're refining. He frowns. So we make the cloth better by ruining our feet? Exactly. He looks unconvinced but keeps stomping. A customer pokes his head through the doorway, a freckled young baker with flour still dusted across his arms. Hey, Titus! You still have my tunic from last week? You glance over. Check the third rack, the one not covered in flies. He laughs, waves, and disappears again. You envy him a little. His work smells of bread, not bile. But then again, he spends his days sweating beside a furnace. Every trade has its hell. Yours just happens to be the fragrant one. As the hours crawl by, your skin starts to prickle. The ammonia bites into tiny cuts on your legs, leaving faint white streaks that sting when you move. You learned long ago not to scratch. The liquid will burn worse the second time around. Marcus stops to catch his breath. How much longer? Until the bubbles stop rising, you answer. He stares at the surface. They don't look like they're stopping anytime soon. Then neither do we. He groans. You're worse than the legions. At least I don't make you carry a shield, though maybe I should. Somewhere outside, thunder grumbles. A storm's brewing. You can smell it, faint and metallic, beneath the ever-present tang of the vats. You hope it'll rain tonight. The runoff will help rinse tomorrow's loads, and maybe the air will feel a little cleaner for a few hours. Rome's weather, like its politics, changes fast. The gutters overflow one minute and choke with dust the next. You've seen whole streets turn to rivers of gray foam during a downpour. You pause to stretch your back, watching the steam curl upward. You know, you muse aloud, I sometimes wonder if the gods watch us and laugh. Marcus smirks. If they do, they probably hold their noses. Fair point, you admit. By late afternoon, you've worked through nearly all the piles. The floor is a patchwork of puddles and footprints. The vats bubble lazily, content for the moment. You and Marcus climb out, dripping and sore. Your legs are pale from the soak, your fingers wrinkled like figs left too long in wine. You rinse off at the small basin near the back, scooping water from the aqueduct channel. It's cool, sharp, refreshing like a blessing. The first touch stings, but the second feels almost holy. As you pour water over your feet, you glance at the garments hanging from the racks. They're brighter now, the whites almost shining, the colors clearer. It's easy to forget what they've just endured. Looks good, Marcus says softly. Better than good. That's Rome right there. Beauty born from filth. He studies the fabric for a moment, then grins. You sound like Decamus. I groan. Don't compare me to philosophers. I work for a living. The storm finally breaks. Rain drums on the roof, trickling down the gutters in narrow streams. You tilt your head back, letting a few drops hit your face. The air feels cleaner already, though the smell will never truly leave. Outside, the alley darkens, the stones slick and glistening. You stand at the threshold, listening to the rain mingle with the hiss of your vats. It's oddly peaceful, the city's usual clamor softened to a steady rhythm. Marcus leans beside you. You ever wish you did something else? You think about it. For a long moment, the answer almost forms on your tongue, but then you shrug. Every trade stinks one way or another. At least ours pays. He laughs quietly. Barely. Then stomp harder tomorrow. As dusk begins to creep over the rooftops, you drain the last vat, tipping the gray water into the gutter. It swirls away, vanishing into the city's labyrinth of drains. The rain helps wash it along, carrying a day's worth of labor out into the Tiber. Somewhere downstream, fishermen will curse you for it. You smile, light a small oil lamp, and start tidying up. Brushes stacked, rags wrung out, jars sealed for the night. Marcus yawns so wide you worry he might fall asleep standing. Go home, you tell him. Tomorrow is another day of paradise. He salutes weakly and slips out into the rain. You stand there alone for a while, staring at the faint ripples in the vats. The sound of rain against clay makes you oddly calm. There's something
You drag another heavy wicker basket toward the rinth channel, the kind of motion your muscles know better than your mind does. The sun has climbed high enough to set every puddle glowing, and for a few heartbeats, even the murky Phalonica looks like a temple. The smell ruins the illusion fast, but you keep moving anyway. The vats burble like cauldrons, steam mixing with the sharper tang of quicklime and the dull metallic sweetness of urine turned sour in the heat. You pause just long enough to flex your toes in the sludge, feeling the soft grit that means the fuller's earth is doing its job. Someone cracks a joke behind you about Roman progress, how the empire conquers half the world, yet its cleanest citizens still rely on a floor full of pee. You laugh, half from the absurdity and half because it's true. The whole process feels like an odd hymn to human stubbornness, a ritual of filth that somehow yields purity. That contradiction keeps the work weirdly dignified. You are a launderer, yes, but also a chemist of the gutter. You lean on the vat's rim, watching the bubbles rise from the mixture of fuller's clay and fermented ammonia. If a philosopher ever wandered in here, he'd call it a metaphor for the Roman soul. Dirty inklets, radiant outcomes. You settle for calling it Tuesday. A coworker passes you a paddle carved from olive wood, its surface bleached smooth by years of stirring. You swirl the fabric slowly, watching the water change color from gray to dull yellow. Each garment floats like a drowned ghost before it sinks into the churn. The rhythm is hypnotic. Dip, twist, squeeze. The sound of it might even be soothing, if not for the endless slosh and the rasp of rope pulleys creaking overhead. To keep spirits up, you talk nonsense. You debate whether the gods prefer clean robes when granting prayers. One man swears Jupiter punished him with lightning ones for skipping a rinse cycle. Another insists Minerva rewards good folding technique. The laughter echoes off the tiled walls, sharp and bright, because everyone knows that if you stop joking, you start smelling the truth again. As the steam thickens, you think about how advanced this place really is. The Phalonica is more than a wash house. It's an early industrial hub, a proto-factory powered by sweat and superstition. Each step is science, part ritual. Soak in urine to break down grease. Rinse in running water from the aqueduct. Beat out the stains with wooden paddles, then hang in the courtyard for the sun to finish the job. Historians still argue whether Roman launderers understood the chemistry behind their craft or simply stumbled into success through generations of stubborn trial and error. Either way, it works. The empire marches in gleaming white, and you're one of the invisible reasons why. You dip your hands into the lukewarm mixture again, and the sting of ammonia bites at the small cuts across your fingers. You wince, then grin. That burn is your signature scent now, something between vinegar and triumph. You smell like a victory parade, your friends sometimes tease, though the compliment depends on how charitable their noses are that day. By midday, the workyard hums like a beehive. Men tramp in circles through the vats, bare legs slick with clay. Women wring tunics over slanted troughs that spill into the street gutters. Children dart in and out carrying buckets, their laughter mingling with the slap of wet cloth. From the open doorway you can glimpse the bustle of the street, vendors shouting, donkeys braying, a pair of legionaries laughing too loudly at some joke they won't repeat inside. Rome never stops, it only changes its smell. A shout goes up from the far end of the yard. The overseer has spotted a cloth left too long in the soak, its dye bleeding out like a slow wound.
The poor apprentice responsible tries to argue that the owner asked for extra brightness, but no one believes him. He'll spend the rest of the day refilling chamber pots as penance. You hide your smirk. Everyone takes a turn eventually. The rhythm returns. Step, squeeze, twist. It's almost meditative. You think about how strange it is that every toga passing through your hands belongs to someone who might never look you in the eye. A senator, a priest, a merchant. They wear their dignity because you cleaned it for them. Yet they would cross the street to avoid the smell of you. There's a certain poetry in that imbalance. During a brief break, you lean against a column and study your reflection in a puddle. Your hair is matted from the steam, your skin dusted gray from clay and sweat. You look older than you are, but there's pride tucked somewhere behind the grime. Without you, the marble forums would look like patchwork mud. Without people like you, Rome would lose its shine. That thought steadies you more than bread ever could. The foreman shouts again, back to work. Someone drops a jug of quicklime, and a small white cloud erupts like a miniature volcano. Everyone coughs, half blind in the haze, and bursts into laughter when the foreman trips into a vat trying to escape it. You can't buy comedy like that. It just bubbles up naturally when everyone's half dizzy from fumes. As the afternoon deepens, you start rinsing the cleaner fabrics. These are the ones belonging to middle-level officials who can afford a second wash with imported lye soap. The soap smells faintly of olives and ashes, almost pleasant after hours of ammonia. You breathe it in greedily, pretending it's perfume. Somewhere a poet might be writing about Rome's sweet airs, and you'd love to invite him here for a sniff of reality. The chatter turns philosophical again. Someone wonders out loud whether future generations will even believe this method existed. Who'd wash clothes with urine, he says. You chuckle, because you can imagine some scholar 2,000 years from now standing in a museum reading about your trade in disbelief. Maybe they'll think it's myth. Maybe they'll think you exaggerated. You want to whisper to them across the centuries, "Oh no, it really stank." A little later, when the vats settle and the light turns golden, the Follonica feels almost peaceful. The stink hasn't gone away, it never does, but your nose has made its peace with it. The soft slap of cloth against stone becomes a lullaby of sorts. Even the pigeons roosting on the roof seem to coo in rhythm with your work. You start thinking about dinner. Lentils, maybe, or if luck holds, a bit of salted fish from the market. The thought warms you. For all the grime, the life is not unbearable. There's camaraderie here, a sense of shared absurdity that binds everyone together tighter than any fine thread. When the last batch of garments finishes soaking, you carry them out to the rinse basins. The water runs clear at first, then turns cloudy, swirling with the ghosts of dirt and sweat and perfume. The city's refuse goes downstream, out toward the Tiber, to mingle with every other trace of Roman life. You like to imagine the river remembering it all, the triumphs, the tragedies, the stink of ambition. By the time dusk hovers over the city, you've squeezed and stacked the last tunic. Your arms tremble with fatigue, but it's the kind that's satisfying. You've turned filth into freshness again. It's not glory, but it's a kind of magic. You rinse your hands one last time, ignoring the sting, and watch the last of the suds drift away in tiny white spirals. Rome exhales around you, the rumble of carts, the faint laughter from nearby taverns, the constant heartbeat of the city that demands to stay spotless no matter how dirty it truly is underneath. You gather your tools and step back from the vats, breathing in the thick evening air. Somewhere above, the first stars blink awake over the rooftops. You smile. They can't smell this place, and that feels like mercy. You slump onto a low wall in the courtyard, the sun warm on your shoulders, and for the first time since dawn, you actually stop moving. Around you, the Follonica exhales in sync, steam venting from rinse troughs, buckets clattering as the last loads finish their soak. It's lunch hour in the empire of stink. The air still tastes faintly of ammonia, but that doesn't stop anyone from unpacking bread and olives. One man balances a wedge of cheese on his knee. Another drags over a jug of watered wine. You join them, grateful for the chance to sit, even if the stones are damp and the smell could peel paint from a temple wall. Someone jokes that you've all lost the right to complain about flavor after breathing fermented pea all morning. You raise your cup in mock salute. To flavor, you say, and to the illusion of clean hands. The group laughs, soft, genuine, worn-out laughter. Between bites, you swap gossip. Which merchant tried to pass off Syrian cotton as Roman linen? Which matron demanded her husband's toga back yesterday? Which apprentice fell asleep in a vat and woke up smelling like a god of vinegar? The jokes are small, the sort of humor that keeps muscles from locking up and minds from wandering too far. A thin cat weaves through the group, tail flicking, eyes sharp for crumbs. You toss her a crust, watch her vanish beneath a pile of drying cloth. There's something comforting about that small rhythm of generosity. The work may grind you down, but even here, in the stink and the heat, you find a moment of softness. You chew in silence for a while, listening. Outside the courtyard, Rome hums. Vendors calling, carts groaning, the faraway clang of a blacksmith's hammer marking time. It's a heartbeat of empire, and somehow you're part of it. Each tunic you scrub keeps a senator respectable. Each robe you whiten props up the illusion that civilization means cleanliness. Historians still argue whether Roman hygiene was progressive or delusional. Sitting here, skin sticky with sweat, you'd say both. A coworker leans back, squinting toward the hazy sky. "You ever think about quitting?" he asks. You smirk. "And do what? Sell figs?" Everyone chuckles, because they all know the truth. Rome always finds a job for the stubborn. And you, with your stained hands and cracked heels, are too good at this particular brand of stubbornness to stop. After the meal, you lie on your back for a few stolen minutes. The smell of damp cloth mingles with the faint sweetness of pressed grapes from a nearby tavern. Your eyelids flutter. In the distance, someone's shouting about a lost mule. Closer by, water trickles from a leaky pipe with hypnotic steadiness. The whole city seems to sway gently between exhaustion and purpose. You think about the emperor's pea tax, how even the smallest thing, the humblest waste, becomes profit. Vespasian's famous words echo like a bad joke, "Pecunia non olet," money doesn't stink. You grin. He'd never scrubbed sandals beside a vat, that's for sure. The break ends too soon. The overseer claps his hands and the lull dissolves. You push yourself upright, feeling the weight of the day settling into your joints. Still, the simple act of standing, again, feels almost noble. You gather the damp tunics from the wall, wring them once more, and return to the endless rhythm. The sun has shifted, throwing long honey-colored shafts through the doorway. Dust dances in the beams like lazy spirits. Back at the vats, you join a few others mixing the whitening paste. The smell is its own kind of insult. Sulfur, pigeon droppings, clay, and whatever else passes for chemistry. You mash it into a thick, pale sludge, spread it over the stained hems of expensive robes, and try not to breathe too deeply. The paste works miracles, though. Within hours, the fabric gleams almost silver. If only the formula could do the same for your skin. Someone hums a tune, something slow and ancient. It drifts over the hiss of steam, oddly soothing. You pick up the rhythm, tapping the side of the vat like a drum. Soon a few others join in, the melody turning into a lazy chant. The words are nonsense, half prayers, half workplace grumbling, but they help the time pass. For a fleeting moment, the Philonica feels less like punishment and more like community. A boy arrives from the market shouting that he's seen a famous charioteer. Everyone perks up.
You ask which team. The Greens, he says, eyes wide. Groans all around. Half the room bleeds blue. The argument that follows is good-natured but fierce. You'd think laundry workers were senators debating foreign policy, not sports fans bickering about horse speeds. It's another reminder that Rome runs on passion as much as politics. Later, a wealthy matron bursts in, all silk and indignation. She waves a stained robe like it's a captured flag. This, she declares, was pure white. You bow, offer your most apologetic tone, and try not to notice the smudge of wine that clearly wasn't your doing. She glares long enough to make your neck ache, then finally tosses a coin on the floor and storms out. It rolls in a slow circle, glinting dully before stopping beside your foot. You pocket it. Her tantrum buys tonight's dinner. As the heat eases, you notice the light has gone amber, the day tilting toward evening. The vats simmer more quietly now. The smell has deepened but softened, as if the air is also getting tired. You rinse your arms in the runoff water, rub them briskly, and almost laugh when your skin emerges lighter than before. Maybe the paste works better than you thought. The last task of the day is to hang the cleaned garments. Ropes stretch across the courtyard, thick with fluttering cloth. You and the others lift each piece carefully, shaking out wrinkles, pinning corners. The linen flaps in the breeze, pale banners against the dimming sky. For once, the sight is beautiful, almost holy. Rome's laundry turned cathedral. When the final toga is hung, you collapse on the same low wall where lunch began. The courtyard glows with the soft gold of sunset, and the smell, though still pungent, is almost tolerable now. You close your eyes, listening to the whisper of fabric overhead. It's the same sound as the Tiber at night, the same rhythm as a deep, steady breath. You think of all the togas drying in the warm air, all the people who will wear them tomorrow without a thought for the hands that cleaned them. You smile faintly. That's the nature of the work, invisible effort making visible purity. Maybe that's what civilization really is, a trick of perspective. A coworker nudges you with a grin. Still alive? You nod. Barely, but clean in spirit. He laughs and tosses you a fig, and you bite into it, juice sweet against the salt of your lips. As the shadows stretch longer, the courtyard cools. Someone starts stacking the tools for morning. Another sweeps the floor, though it will be filthy again within hours. You stay seated, too tired to move, watching the last traces of light fade from the walls. The cat from earlier reappears, winding between your ankles. You reach down, stroke her rough fur, and feel her purr, a soft vibration that hums through the grime and the fatigue. In that tiny sound, the world feels manageable again. Rome exhales. The city's endless noise fades into background murmurs. You breathe with it, slow and steady, each exhale carrying away a layer of the day. The stars begin to prick through the dusk like scattered soap bubbles caught in the air. You tilt your head back and imagine the constellations reflected in the rinse water, distorted but still shimmering. It's a quiet, improbable beauty, born of filth, framed by fatigue, and all the more precious for it. You close your eyes. Somewhere nearby, someone hums again, the same tune as before. You let it drift through you, a lullaby for the unglamorous. And as sleep edges close, you realize something strange. The smell no longer bothers you. It's simply the air of your world, the breath of work, the scent of survival. You smile into the darkness and let it take you. The courtyard quiets completely. Only the slow flap of cloth remains, rhythmic, patient, like the sea. The moon slips over the rooftops, washing the vats in silver light. Shadows lengthen, soft and harmless. You stretch, bones heavy but content, and lean back against the wall. The air is cooler now, carrying a faint sweetness from the bakery 2 streets away. It blends with the last traces of ammonia until neither scent seems real anymore, just memory. Somewhere far off, a fountain trickles. The sound joins the sigh of drying fabric, and together they make a lullaby older than history. You breathe it in, feeling your heartbeat slow, your thoughts scatter like dust in moonlight. All around you, Rome continues. Markets closing, torches